I wasn't expecting anyone. It was late, too late for visitors, and the house was quiet the way I liked it after a long day. I had just sat down, the soft hum of the ceiling fan above me, and the silence outside mixing into something peaceful. That kind of silence that only comes when everything feels just a little too still. Then, without a single knock or warning, the door creaked open. He walked in like he owned the place. No guilt, no hesitation. Just stood there. His eyes scanned the room, then locked onto mine. I didn't move. I should have said something, asked him what the hell he thought he was doing, but I didn't. I let him watch. Maybe it was shock, maybe it was something else. You ever have a moment where your mind can't decide between fear and familiarity? Like your instincts scream run, but your heart says wait? That's what this felt like, because I knew him. Not well, but enough. Enough to know he wasn't just some stranger off the street. Enough to feel that gut pull, the one that tells you this isn't just a random moment. There's something bigger happening here. He didn't speak, not at first. Just kept watching me, like he was trying to figure something out. Like he was waiting for me to explain myself, even though he was the one who barged in. And for some reason, I couldn't look away either. I let it happen. What he saw, I don't think he was ready for it. Honestly, I wasn't either. But by the time I realized what was unfolding, it was already too late to take any of it back. And that was just the beginning. He took one slow step forward, his eyes narrowing just slightly, like he was trying to remember something, or maybe trying to decide if he was in the right place at all. I hadn't moved, still frozen in that odd mix of disbelief and something I couldn't quite name. My heartbeat was loud in my ears, but everything else was silent. Too silent. I glanced toward the hallway behind him, wondering if someone else was coming in too, but it was just him, still standing there like time wasn't moving, like we were stuck in a moment that neither of us had asked for. The weight of the silence started to press in, and finally I spoke. "You weren't supposed to be here," I said, not sure if it was meant to sound like a question or a warning. He didn't answer. His jaw tightened slightly, and I saw the flicker of something behind his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or guilt. I wasn't sure yet. He stepped closer, but still didn't say a word. I stood slowly, not sure what I was going to do. It felt strange, how quickly the air had changed in the room. What had been a calm, quiet evening now felt like the edge of something unpredictable, something I hadn't prepared for. "You remember me?" he finally asked, voice low and cautious. I hesitated. "Yeah, I do. We'd crossed paths before, but only briefly. He was someone from a time I didn't like to think about anymore, a part of my past that felt better left untouched." But clearly, he didn't agree. He hadn't just shown up by accident. This was intentional, and that unsettled me more than anything. He took another step in. "I wasn't sure you'd still be here," he said, almost like he was talking to himself. I swallowed, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why are you here?" He looked around the room like it held answers. I needed to see for myself. "See what?" I wanted to ask, but something in his tone made me stop. He wasn't just here for a visit. He was searching for something, or someone. And I had a feeling it wasn't just about me. He glanced toward the old photograph on the shelf, the one I never touched, never mentioned. His eyes lingered there a second too long. "Does she know?" he asked quietly. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because if he was here asking that question, it meant something was already unraveling. I looked away from the photograph, pretending I hadn't heard his question. But the air had already shifted again, heavier now, like the truth was pressing itself into the room, waiting to be acknowledged. He was still staring at that picture, her smile frozen in time, unaware of what would come years later. That photo hadn't moved in over a decade, and yet now it felt like it was suddenly the center of everything. "She doesn't know," I said finally, my voice quiet, "and she can't." He turned to look at me, his face unreadable. "You think secrets stay buried just because you stopped talking about them?" That hit harder than I expected. He wasn't just here to stir up old memories. He came with a purpose. And from the way he stood, tense but calm, I knew he had been carrying something too, maybe just as heavy. "There's a reason I left all that behind," I said, feeling the edge of defensiveness creep into my tone. He took a deep breath, like he was trying to keep something from boiling over. "Yeah, and there's a reason I didn't." I watched him for a moment, unsure of what to say. Part of me wanted to push him out, slam the door and forget he ever stepped back into my life. But another part, the one that never stopped wondering what happened after we all went our separate ways, wanted to hear him out. "She's been asking questions," he said, "digging into the past, into your past, and mine." My stomach sank. Of course she had. She never could leave things alone, not when she thought someone was hiding something. She was too much like me in that way. "You shouldn't have come here," I said, though I knew it was too late for that now. He nodded slowly. "I know. But if you think this is something you can control, you're wrong. It's already started." I stepped back, suddenly feeling like the walls of the house were closing in. I wasn't ready for this. Not for the memories, not for the guilt, and especially not for her to get caught in the middle of it all. He looked at me one last time before turning toward the door. "You should tell her the truth before someone else does." And just like that, he was gone. The door clicked shut behind him, but the silence he left behind was louder than anything else. I stood there for a moment, barely breathing, like if I moved too fast, everything might fall apart. My eyes drifted back to the photo again. Her face, her eyes, the way she smiled like nothing bad could ever touch her. But something had, and it was starting to rise back to the surface. I walked over and picked up the frame for the first time in years. Dust clung to the edges. The glass was a little cracked in the corner. That happened the night I almost threw it out but couldn't bring myself to do it. Back then, I told myself the past didn't matter if you didn't give it space. But now it had walked through my front door like it still had a right to be here. I tried to calm my thoughts, but they were racing. "She's been asking questions." That sentence wouldn't leave me alone. If she was close to the truth, then I didn't have much time. And if he knew, that meant others might know too. I wasn't just dealing with my own memories anymore. This was bigger now. I grabbed my coat and stepped outside. The night was cold, sharp. The streets were quiet, but that same feeling from earlier, like something was just out of sight, was still there. I needed answers, and I knew exactly where to find them. I drove across town, every turn of the wheel pulling me deeper into a past I'd tried hard to forget. The lights blurred past the windows, and my fingers gripped the steering wheel tighter with every block. My mind kept circling back to her. If she knew everything, would she still trust me? Would she still stay? I pulled up to the small cafe where she usually spent her late nights. Her car was there, parked under the flickering streetlight. I sat in my car for a moment, watching the windows, my heart pounding louder than the engine. I could see her inside, sitting in her usual spot, notebook open, headphones in, so unaware, so close to the edge of something she didn't even see coming. I got out and walked up slowly, but something made me stop before I reached the door. Across the street, a man stood in the shadows watching her, watching us. He didn't move, didn't even pretend to hide. My stomach twisted. It wasn't just me he came to warn. It was her too, maybe all of us. I stepped back, trying not to draw attention. I didn't recognize the man, but the way he stood told me everything I needed to know. He knew something, and he wasn't the only one. The walls were closing in faster than I thought. Everyone was starting to play their part, and the past we buried was crawling back into the light, piece by piece. I just didn't know who was pulling the strings anymore. I stepped back into the shadow of the building, watching the man across the street with a sinking feeling I couldn't shake. He hadn't moved, just stood there, still and focused, like he had all the time in the world, like he was waiting for something, or someone. The more I stared, the more certain I became. He wasn't here by accident. He was watching her for a reason, and that reason had everything to do with me. I glanced back at her through the cafe window. She looked calm, distracted in her own world, scribbling something in that worn notebook of hers. She didn't know how close danger really was. She didn't know that the thing she was digging into had already started to pull others in. I had to warn her, but something told me barging in now would only draw more attention. I took out my phone and texted her, "Don't leave. I need to talk. Now." She glanced down when the screen lit up, then looked up, confused. Her eyes scanned the cafe for me, but I ducked behind the edge of the wall before she saw me. I needed to be smart, careful. When I looked back across the street, the man was gone. I froze. My eyes darted up and down the sidewalk, but it was empty. He couldn't have disappeared that fast. I turned to look behind me and stopped cold. He was standing at the corner of the building, less than 10 feet away. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice low but firm. His face was sharp in the streetlight now, unfamiliar but somehow connected. There was something in the way he looked at me, like he knew exactly who I was. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice tighter than I intended. "I'm not the one with secrets," he replied. "But I am the one who knows what happens when they stay buried too long." Before I could respond, he held something out. A small black flash drive. "You'll want to see what's on this before you make your next move." I didn't take it. Not yet. My mind raced with questions. Who sent him? What did he know? Why now? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "She's not the only one asking questions. And if you don't act fast, someone else is going to answer them for you, with the wrong story." Then he turned and walked off, vanishing into the night like he'd never been there. I stared at the drive in my hand, feeling the weight of it like it might explode. I didn't know what was on it, but I knew whatever it revealed would change everything. Suddenly, this wasn't just about old mistakes and buried truths. There were other people involved now, people who wanted to control the narrative before I could. The danger wasn't creeping in anymore. It was already here, and I wasn't sure who I could trust. Not even her. I didn't sleep that night. The flash drive sat on my desk, untouched for hours, like it was daring me to open it. When I finally gave in, my hands trembled. Inside were files, audio clips, scanned documents, one video. The video started with a date, 10 years ago. A shaky recording of a conversation I barely remembered. But there I was, younger, reckless, saying things I never thought would come back to haunt me. Things I swore no one else had heard. Then came the twist, voices I didn't expect. Heron and his, talking in the background, long after I thought they were out of the picture. That moment, casual at the time, suddenly looked like something else entirely. A setup, or worse, a cover-up. It hit me all at once. They had known. Not everything maybe, but enough. Enough to use it if they ever needed to. And now they were. I rushed back to the cafe just as the sun was rising. She was gone. Only her notebook remained, tucked under her seat. I flipped through it. Notes, questions, names, mine included. But what caught me off guard wasn't the details she had uncovered. It was a letter folded neatly in the back, addressed to me. I found out what happened that night. I didn't want to believe it, but the more I searched, the more the pieces came together. You weren't supposed to be the one who paid for it, but you let it happen. and now someone else is trying to finish the story. I had to go. If you're reading this, then they're already close. Don't come after me. You'll only make it worse. I read it twice, heart pounding. Everything I had tried to protect, all the lies I told myself were harmless, had finally reached the surface. The main conflict wasn't just between me and the past. It was between the truth and what we were willing to do to avoid it. I walked outside, still gripping the letter. The man from last night stood across the street again, but this time he wasn't alone. Next to him stood her. She looked up, met my eyes, and then turned away without a word. That was the twist I never saw coming. She wasn't running from the truth. She was part of it. I stood there for a long time watching them disappear down the street. No goodbyes, no second chances, just silence, and the quiet closing of a door I didn't even realize had still been open. I should have been angry, but all I felt was empty, like the truth had taken more from me than the lies ever did. Back home, I sat in the same chair where it all started, the one under the ceiling fan with the soft hum I used to find comfort in. It didn't feel the same anymore. The flash drive still sat next to me, but it had nothing left to say. The damage was already done. And the real story, the one behind all the secrets, had never been mine alone to tell. I kept thinking about her final words. You weren't supposed to be the one who paid for it. Maybe she was right. Maybe none of us were. But someone always does. That's how stories like this end. Not with clean answers or dramatic closure, but with quiet acceptance that the past leaves marks you can't always erase. The photo on the shelf stayed there. I didn't move it. I didn't hide it again. Because despite everything, some things deserve to stay in the light. Not to relive the pain, but to remember what it cost to keep it hidden. She had played her part more than I ever knew. And in her own way, maybe she thought she was protecting something too. Maybe we all were. A few days later, I received a plain envelope in the mail. No return address. Just a single sheet inside. A photo of the three of us from years ago, before everything changed. On the back, written in her handwriting, "We all chose our silence." Yours was just the loudest. That was the last I heard from her. The questions stopped coming. The messages disappeared. The man never showed up again. And slowly, life returned to its quiet rhythm. But nothing really went back to how it was. Not inside. If there's one thing I learned, it's that the truth doesn't wait forever. You can bury it, rewrite it, even forget it for a while. But eventually, it knocks. And when it does, you better be ready to answer, or someone else will. I opened the window that night, let the breeze in, and finally turned off the fan. It was time to stop pretending. Some doors, once opened, never really close.